All right, well, here's a few news stories that I thought were interesting. They're hacking into gig workers' accounts to steal money. I didn't completely understand how this scam works. They hack into gig workers' accounts like Instacart that apparently are not being used much, and then they buy purchases and assign it to that gig worker, and they buy gift cards and then return them to get the money or something. I don't quite understand exactly how this is fraud, but they managed to steal $30 million this way, somehow by having access to people's gig accounts. So that's interesting to know. I always thought it might be worth reading this more carefully and understanding what this thought is. But anyway, apparently hacking into gig accounts can make you money. This is certainly reasonable. Now we're using drones like crazy. The Ukraine war is where you really see it. Drones seem to be the modern military answer to everything, just like it used to be tanks and airplanes. And therefore, we need counter-drone technology, and we don't really have good counter-drone technology now. I've seen videos of trying to make drones with nets to catch other drones, and the Russians are using jamming of electronic signals to stop the drones. And so in response, sort of Ukrainians, so in response, they're using drones that are controlled by fiber optic cable, miles of it hanging off them, and they're also making drones that have onboard AI, so they make their own targeting decisions, just like the Terminator. They go out there and blow things up based on their own internal AI and vision, and that's another way. But anyway, they're saying we really need to protect America, which certainly makes sense. I remember under the Obama administration, they freaked out because somebody flew a helicopter over the White House. And one science fiction scenario I've read about years ago, I'm waiting for, is when you just make really small drones the size of a mosquito. I think at that point, you're screwed. You could just fly in and inject a drop of poison into anybody, and there's almost nothing you could do to stop it. So anyway, it is a big issue. How are we going to stop drones? And they're working on counter-drone technology. Another thing we saw last semester is the United States Navy is now making millions of water drones that are just like torpedoes that fly on the surface, and they mass produce them. They're cheap, and then you have little smart things to blow up ships and coastlines and stuff. Again, very effective because they're small and you can have a lot of them, so they're hard to stop. This is kind of screwy. Claude is one of the most powerful AIs. It's generally considered one of the best at writing code, but Anthropic has now given everyone 30 days to opt out. Otherwise, they're going to retain all your requests, your whole history for 5 years, so they can use it to train their models. And this is why all the large companies, including, for that matter, the AI companies, have forbidden their employees from using these things. Because anything you send to a public AI model like ChatGPT or Claude is data sent to another company which does not promise to keep it secret. In fact, they mostly tell you the free plan will mean they train the model on that data, which means it might repeat it back to any other customer. So anything you send them should be considered compromised, and people should not be using them for work, but they are. It's one of the many forms of shadow IT, where there's something that's convenient, and so people start doing it even though it is insecure. This happened 15 years ago. There was a huge push to the cloud with shadow IT. People were renting Amazon servers and putting things in the cloud without going through their own tech department because it was too slow. And so all kinds of company data was being sent off to machines that were not being secured. And this is the new modern version of the same thing. Shadow IT has been a problem for a really long time. And by the way, I should mention the solution to this is a book called The Phoenix Project, which I try to remember to point out frequently. This is a great book to read. And this book explains what AI explains what DevOps is in a fictional form. It's very easy to read. And the point here is most companies suffer from this shadow IT problem because they have an unwise company structure that has too many non-technical workers. So I used to work at companies like this. Every company I've ever worked with has largely been like this. There is one technical guy that is overwhelmed, that wrote all the scripts, that runs everything in the company, and is the only one that can do anything. And that person is completely buried under work, and nobody can get their attention, so everything's falling apart. And there's just layers of protection around this guy, and everything is out of organization. Everything is disorganized and messed up because you don't have enough technical staff. And the solution is for everybody to learn how to code and everybody to automate their job and to reorganize the structure of your company. So each person, another thing that happened at every company I've ever worked at, I think fair enough, including this college, is that the best way to solve your problem is to just make more trouble for somebody else. You just make a mess, and it's somebody else's job to clean it up, and that's how you meet your deadlines. And in the Phoenix Project, you rearrange it so that can't happen. Every team that works on something, the next team they hand it off to is their customer, and they have to be in contact with them and make sure that what they're doing is actually serving the next person in line, so that everything goes smoothly from development through testing, quality assurance, security, and then deployment to the customer. All these steps should be automated, and anytime anything fails and has to go back for rework, that should be where management steps in and says, why did this happen, and we're going to fix it. This is what Amazon did. Amazon invented this stuff called DevOps, and that is the cure for things like shadow IT. Every team is controlling their own technology instead of waiting for some overworked IT department that doesn't understand your needs to eventually cough up something that's really not going to work, which is the standard way it is at most companies. Anyway, and that's what's happening here. People are using these cloud services even though they shouldn't, because it's the most efficient way to get their job done, and they find that their own IT department is not effective, and that their own security department just gets in their way instead of helping them do their job. And if you take the CISSP class, they talk about this a lot. If you're the security guy, you need to not be the enemy of progress that blocks everything. You need to help people achieve their job in a safe way. And if they start seeing you as a hostile force, then they will just break all your rules and go around you. And so this is interesting. Vibe coding is, of course, the big thing now where you ask an AI to write code for you. The hottest one now is Cursor, which I haven't tried yet. I'm planning to check it out and use it in my coding classes. But anyway, now they've discovered that the older developers use it more because they understand what they're doing and they know how to audit it and fix it when it makes mistakes, which is an interesting statement. Certainly, I would expect this at Microsoft, because Microsoft ordered a month or two ago, all their developers must use AI, otherwise you're fired. Because Microsoft is trying to sell AI. And Microsoft, all the way back to Bill Gates, for 20 years, Microsoft has always had the belief that they can just force people to use their product. Instead of making a product good enough that anybody wants it, they think they can just order you to use it. Like, remember, Bill Gates would not let his wife or his daughter have an iPod. They had to have a Zune. And at Microsoft offices, they said everybody, of course, had an iPod, but they said when Bill walked through, you would pull out a Zune and pretend you were listening to that. Because the thing was garbage, apparently. I never had one. But you had to pretend to have it or you'd be seen as disloyal. And, I'm just amazed that a company can survive this way. It reminds me of the Trump administration, where instead of actually doing a good thing, they order you to say you like it, or I'll beat you. It's a strange way to run a company. Elon Musk is this way. He's now suing people for not buying ads on Twitter. Instead of providing a service people want, he thinks he can force you to pay for the service you don't want. And that's a curious business model. Anyway, apparently the older developers are figuring out how to use AI coding. It's interesting. I haven't got that much good out of it myself yet, but I'm not doing serious development. Anyway, so this is, every now and then the Republicans do something that has some truth in it. This one is kind of true. They're complaining about the endangered species list because they say it doesn't work, which is a fair statement. Something like 93% of all the species that were placed on the endangered species list are just there forever, which means putting them on the list did not cause the species to be revived, so maybe it's kind of pointless, and you could make that argument. So, of course, their answer is just don't save any species, just slaughter everything, burn it all down because it doesn't matter. That's the Republican position, which is probably not a great answer either, but they kind of have a point that our current conservation procedures aren't working that well. And Salt Typhoon hit the news about a year or two ago because they hacked into all our telephone networks. This really bothered the people in the Pentagon, and they got very upset. It's showing our telephone systems are not well protected, and for that matter, Microsoft Cloud and Microsoft Office Online is not very well protected. And now they are admitting not only did China get in everything a couple of years ago, but they're still in there. We have not kicked them out. They have backdoors and ways back in, which is not good at all. Yeah, let's get rid of, well, I didn't. This I was pretty amazed by. A Chinese girl, yeah, but what she did, she had her family's in Myanmar. Now, you may not remember Myanmar. I don't know much about it except that it was held up in the first Trump term. The MAGA people were chanting, we should be like Myanmar. They have the kind of dictatorship we should have here. And apparently they have open slave markets in Myanmar. And she has family in Myanmar, so she picks up boyfriends and just sends them off there to become slaves, which is pretty extreme, I'd say. Anyway, that's enough news for the moment. Let me stop this.